Welcome to all. In the present educational situations, we can see that the role of the head is in multiple in nature. In such context, today's discussion is very relevant, that is on leadership styles. And all of us know that we have different kinds of leadership styles to observe and to follow. In this discussion, our focus will be upon to define the term leadership and leader, to classify the different types of leadership styles, and to examine the attributes of an effective leader. For this topic, for having an elaborate discussion, we have with us Dr. Elizabeth Jacob. Let I introduce the resource person. Dr. Elizabeth Jacob is the Director of Educational Research and Development with Pencil, an NGO working in the area of education. At present, she is working as an assistant professor in New Delhi Institute of Management, having 15 years of teaching experience as well as administrative experience. Dr. Elizabeth Jacob had contributed a lot and always connecting with the industry, academia and research. So with this vast experience in varied fields of education, research and industry, I invite Dr. Elizabeth Jacob for this discussion. So for the beginning, could you please explain about the term leadership and the roles of a leader?
Definitely, Dr. Elizabeth. To begin today's session, I want to take this quote, which is by Tom Peters, and it says, "Great leaders do not create followers, but they create leaders." To talk about leadership. Leadership is actually the ability to persuade others to seek objectives enthusiastically. As we move up in any organization, when we are promoted to senior positions, one of the greatest responsibilities on our shoulder will be to lead a team. And leadership in that context becomes a very essential part of our job responsibility. Usually in organizations, we can see leadership in two forms. One is formal leadership, which a person gets due to the designation that they hold, and the other is informal leadership, which a person gets because of the skills or the characteristics that they have naturally in them. Leadership can be top-down, or it can even be bottom-up. Let's take a look at this diagram. Here, the head teacher is responsible to the top management, as well as she is required to manage a group of teachers. He or she is required to manage a group of administration staff. At the same time, she will also be required to lead a group of students. So here you can see the role of a teacher, which is multidimensional, that is bottom up as well as top down. So a leader is responsible for a people in a team. Some of the roles which you can see a leader play include, they need to guide a process, they need to inspire a shared vision among the students or the colleagues or the top management again. They have to enable others to act towards a specific goal. They have to show their example and lead, show by example. That is, model the way that their subordinates or co-team members need to take. They're basically required to encourage the heart.
So normally, we may state that a leader is responsible to lead a team. Mm-hmm. And in such cases, there will be specific functions as well as multiple functions of a leader. Could you please delineate between these two functions?
Definitely. Some of the specific functions which you can see a leader play. First and foremost, a leader is responsible to search for opportunities for the organization's growth. Not just an organization's growth, even the growth of the team members. A leader will be required to experiment and take risks in the organization in terms of the roles that they play. They will have to envision, where do we want to go? Where do you want to take the organization? They have to envision the future. They have to enlist others. They have to foster collaboration among the team members. Sometimes in a team, you might experience there might be an unhealthy competition that might come into place. It is a responsibility of the team leader to make sure that such competition does not happen and there is so much of collaboration between the team members. A leader is also required to strengthen every single team member. They need to set the example. They need to plan small wins. We can't really just focus on the main goal where we need to reach. Small achievements also need to be celebrated. They need to recognize individual contribution and as well as celebrate each and every accomplishments of the team member. This is how you keep your team members motivated.
And normally, the concept of leader or leadership, it is emerging from the theoretical background.
Yes.
Could you throw some light on the different theories of leadership?
Definitely. Let's take a look at how the leadership theories actually evolved over a period of time, how the concept of leadership actually evolved. To begin with, the first earlier phase of leadership theories evolved with trait aspects. That means people's understanding was that a leader emerges because of certain characteristics that they hold. Great leaders possess certain traits that sets them apart from the non-leaders. For example, take the case of Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela. There were certain characteristics that definitely held them distant or different from a non-leader. But the problem with trait theory was research studies could not support it empirically. Not just that, if you look at all the research studies related to trait theories, you can see that the list of traits of leaders just goes on and on and on. And so, combining all these trait theories together, they could not arrive at a set of theories, a short list of traits, which is specific to a leader. This was the major drawback of trait theories. Moving on to the second phase of leadership theories, let's take a look at one of the trait theory application. So this is Giselli's self-description inventory. This is just a few words which has been taken from the questionnaire. What Giselli asked every leader was to pick certain phrases, certain words which describe them. So it was a self-description of yourself. You're reflecting on yourself and you pick words from this list. Accordingly, we will be able to arrive, Giselli expected that we will be able to arrive at certain traits that differentiates a leader from a non-leader. And here is the output, the traits of effective leaders according to Giselli. Giselli said that a leader needs to have supervisory abilities, a leader needs to be intelligent, a leader needs to have initiative, a leader has to have great self-assurance, a leader needs to be decisive, he needs to be mature. And Giselli also found that leaders generally have a need for self-actualization. They have a need for power over other team members. They have a need for high financial rewards and even a very high need for job security. So this is just one of the theories among the trait theories.
Dr. Elizabeth has spoken elaborately about the self-description inventory. And before that, Dr. Elizabeth has spoken about the trait theory. And in such cases, Madam has highlighted about some of the great personalities like Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela. When we look at such great personalities, what makes them different from the common people? That's a question that we have to ask. There comes the great person theory. We can explain about that great person theory only. How some people become great from among the commons? What is the trait that makes them differ from the other? So, in such context, could you please explain about the attributes that a leader should possess?
Definitely. Here are some of the characteristics of successful leaders. Successful leaders, if you observe, they will have a very strong drive. They have a very strong initiation to do certain things. They have a desire for achievement. They have a desire for ambition. They have a very high energy and a very high level of initiation as well. We can also observe that a great leader will be honest and they will have a very strong integrity. Just imagine you are being led by a person and one fine morning you see that this person is lying to you. Will you ever accept that person as a leader? No. That is exactly the thing. To be a great leader, you need to be honest and you need to have a very strong integrity. Then there is leadership motivation, which is the desire to exercise influence over others. There will be a very good self-confidence for a leader. The person will be able to trust in his own abilities. They have a very strong cognitive ability, which is they are intelligent and they are able to integrate and interpret large amounts of data. Sometimes your subordinate might come to you and will be confused in terms of what do I do with this amount of data? That's where a leader steps in and he or she will be able to break those big pieces of information into small pieces so that they are able to execute their responsibilities well. A great leader will also be extremely creative. They will have something new to express every time. They will be flexible as well. As a leader, you can't be rigid in your roles and responsibilities. You need to be flexible according to the situation. They have good expertise in the area as well.
Very rightly, Madam has spoken about the different attributes that a leader should possess. When we think of us, whether it is in classroom or in an organization as an administrative leader or a classroom teacher or a head teacher, we need to possess such type of attributes. So here, Madam has stated that in spite of the strictness, there should be flexibility. So this flexible approach is very much important for the smooth running of a learning institution or an academic institution. So any institution there needs flexibility. Then there are other theories which are related with the behavioral theories of leadership.
Yes.
Could you elaborate more on the behavioral theories of leadership?
Definitely. This was a second phase of leadership theories which talked about the behavioral aspects of a leader. So here you see an evolution from traits. A leader is not just because of the characteristics that they possess, but also certain behavioral nature in them. So Ohio State University researchers tried to identify leader behaviors associated based on effective group performance. And they were able to arrive at two main dimensions. One is initiating structure, which is a leader who possesses too much of task orientation. They are outcome based, focused. The second major dimension is consideration, wherein a leader is focusing upon the relationship. Let's take a look at an example in this particular grid. This is Blake and Morton's managerial grid, which is under the behavioral theory. So if you look at the x-axis, you can see concern for results, which is the initiating structure dimension in behavioral theory. And if you look at the y-axis, you can see concern for people, which is again relationship orientation in a leader. So when a leader is low on both these characteristics, that is his concern for results and concern for people, we can see something called as impoverished management. This might not be effective in any institution. But when you look at the right side of the grid, which is the person is high in terms of concern for results, whereas the leader's concern for people is less, we can see produce or perish management style, which is either you give me results or probably you're thrown out of the organization. Well, I want you to reflect whether this kind of a style of leadership will be effective in the organization that you play. The third category is when you are high in terms of your concern for people, but your concern for results is low. And this particular leadership style is called country club management. That means you're more emotionally attached to your team members, but you're not concerned about the outcome. Again, is this effective or not? I would want you to reflect. Then there is a middle the road management, which is you give equal importance to concern for results as well as concern for people. But again, your initiation or your drive towards it is in the middle level. The best way of leadership style when it comes to behavioral leadership would be you have a high concern for people. At the same time, you have a high concern for results as well. And that is called team management.
So we have seen what type of leadership is there and other things. With an example, Dr. Elizabeth has explained about the behavioral theory of leadership. Besides this behavioral theory, there are other theories like situational theories. Could you throw some light on situational theories?
Sure. So situational theory actually, there is an alternate word also that describes situational theory, which is called adaptive leadership style. You adapt your leadership according to the situation at hand. If you look at trait or behavioral theory, the idea was there is a way in which a leader operates, and in whichever situation the leader is in, this is exactly how he or she would behave. Whereas situational approach to leadership talks about adapting your leadership style according to the situation at hand. Here is an example which is shown in the slide, which is Hershey and Blanchard's 4 leadership styles. If you look at the diagram, you can see down below D4, D3, D2, and D1. This actually talks about how equipped are your subordinates to take up a responsibility in your organization. If your subordinates fall in the D4 category, the only thing that you need to do is delegate the responsibility and the team members will perform the output as in it is required. Whereas if they are in the D3 category, you need to support your team leaders a little. Only then they will be able to give the output that is required. If it is D2, again, the skills are a little more less. You need to coach and guide and train the team members so that they are able to perform better. But if they are in the D1 category, please make sure that you give very clear, minute instructions to your subordinates. Only then they will be able to perform. Now, depending on the kind of subordinate you get, you will have to adapt your leadership style according to the situation. Imagine you're trying to direct a person who is in the D4 category. That will be disastrous. You must never attempt that because a person who is skilled might never want a leader who is trying to direct or micro-monitor at every stage. At the same time, a leader who is in the D1 category cannot be left loose. You cannot just delegate responsibility expecting that they would give the outcome.
Okay, so we have seen what is meant by this situational leadership and behavioral leadership also. And when we take the educational institution, we can see that sometimes this situational leadership we have to adopt. So, as a head of the institution, we have to deal from the topmost, not only the teachers, even to the attender, the menial staff also. That time, how the approach of a leader is, that is an important thing. In such context, who is known as an effective leader?
That's a very tough question to answer. Let's take a look at the interaction approach. This is actually a combination of leader traits, the needs of the group, as well as the situation. You need to be so adaptive and very observant of the situation that you are in, and accordingly perform in a situation. People with different traits will be successful at different times. Fred Fielder actually talks about a task-oriented leader who's successful where you have a very high degree of structure or an extremely low degree of structure. That means a person who is focused on results. A relationship-oriented leader will be successful where there is moderate degree of structure.
Okay, so we have seen the interaction approach, how much it is important in an institution. When we look at this approach, we know that as a head of the institution, because this topic is related with the course MA 005, so in that, we are dealing with the head teachers, how they can improve their qualities, their expertise, and skills. So, what type of approach as a head teacher, as a principal, or as a in charge teacher they are providing to their colleagues? That is an important thing. What type of interaction is taking place? So, could you please narrate some of the situations in school environment where this interaction approach is very much relevant? Some examples.
Sure. So there was a school in which the teachers were actually focused on a very traditional style of teaching. They were just teaching from the textbooks, and today we are talking of experiential learning. Over there, it was the responsibility of the principal to bring about the change. And the principal was finding it very difficult because you have a combination of people among your teachers. You have teachers who are very proficient in their caliber, whereas you have teachers who are very resistant to change. Now, in such a situation, the principal will have to adapt according to the person that the principal is dealing with. If you're dealing with a person who is open to this change, bring in experiential learning into the classrooms, you can clearly just go them, delegate it, and probably just give a little bit of a motivation. Whereas when it comes to those people who are trying to resist the change in the school, you need to have something called as the transformational leadership, which is charismatic leadership style, where you're trying to create an emotional level of change in the person that you're dealing with. And that brings me to the next topic, which is transformational leadership, or it is also called charismatic leadership.
Yes.
We know so many people. If you just talk about charismatic leadership, we would have people who come into our minds. They are basically change makers of the society. It could be social, it could be political, it could be economic realities. They have the charisma to bring about change in a society. They are able to recognize the need for a revitalization or a change that is required in the organization. They create a new vision and they institutionalize the change in the organization. That is the situation that I was talking about right now. A traditionally working institution needs to come into experiential learning.
Yes.
And how do you take the institution to that level? You probably need charismatic leadership style there.
Okay.